Amani Hassan had learned to make herself invisible. In the 18 months she'd worked for the Carrington family, she'd perfected the art of disappearing into the background of their sprawling Beverly Hills mansion, of anticipating needs before they were spoken, of enduring casual cruelty with a smile that never reached her eyes. Her Ethiopian mother had taught her that dignity wasn't something others could take, only something you could surrender. So Amani held onto hers with both hands, even when Mrs. Carrington criticized her accent, even when 10-year-old Brandon threw tantrums that left her exhausted, even when her paycheck barely covered the money she wired home to Addis Ababa every month. The red-eye flight from New York to Los Angeles should have been simple. Brandon was supposed to sleep. Amani was supposed to sit 3 rows back, close enough to be available, far enough to be invisible. That was the rule. But then the child started crying. Not Brandon, who slept soundly in his first-class seat, noise-cancelling headphones firmly in place. Another child across the aisle, 1 row up, a little girl with pigtails and tears streaming down her face, while a man in a crisp white shirt stared at his daughter with something close to panic in his dark eyes. Amani should have stayed in her seat. She didn't. The little girl couldn't have been more than 4 years old, and her cries were the kind that spoke of exhaustion rather than tantrum, high-pitched, hiccuping sobs that made Amani's chest ache with recognition. She'd heard those same sounds from her younger siblings back home, the kind of crying that came from being too tired, too overwhelmed, too small in a world that felt enormous and confusing. The man holding her looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine, sharp jawline, black hair styled with precision, a white dress shirt with exactly 4 buttons undone, revealing smooth skin, and the edge of what looked like a tattoo curving along his neck. Expensive watch. Designer luggage. Everything about him screamed wealth and power, but his hands trembled slightly as he tried to soothe his daughter. "Hanaya, please," he murmured, his voice deep with a hint of an accent that Amani couldn't quite place. "You need to sleep, baby. We'll be home soon." The girl only cried harder, her small hands clutching at his shirt. 3 rows back, Amani felt Mrs. Carrington's sharp elbow dig into her ribs. "Don't even think about it," the woman hissed, her voice low enough that only Amani could hear. "Stay in your seat. You're here for Brandon, not every crying brat on the plane." Amani's jaw tightened. Brandon was 10 years old and perfectly capable of sitting alone for a few hours. This little girl was breaking her father's heart with every sob, and Amani knew what might help. She unbuckled her seatbelt. "Excuse me," Mrs. Carrington's voice rose, sharp as cut glass. "Where do you think you're going?" Amani didn't answer. She moved up the aisle, aware of the other passengers' stares, aware of the judgment and curiosity and irritation. The flight attendant looked ready to intervene, but something in Amani's expression must have stopped her. She paused beside the man's seat. Up close, he was even more striking. Dark eyes that held exhaustion and frustration in equal measure. The tattoo on his neck revealed as a minimalist tiger rendered in clean black lines. When those eyes lifted to meet hers, Amani felt something shift in the air between them. "I'm sorry to intrude," she said softly, her Ethiopian accent wrapping gently around the English words. "But may I try something? I work with children." The man studied her for a long moment. She could see him taking in her modest dress, her cornrowed hair, the calluses on her hands that spoke of hard work. Whatever he saw made him nod slowly, desperation winning out over suspicion. "Please," he said simply. Amani crouched down to the little girl's eye level. "Hello, sweet one," she murmured. "My name is Amani. What's yours?" "Hannah," the girl hiccuped, dark eyes swimming with tears. "Hannah, that's a beautiful name." Amani's voice dropped into the cadence she used with her siblings, soft and melodic. "Do you know what I do when I can't sleep? I think about all the stars in the sky. Do you like stars?" Hannah nodded, her crying tapering to quiet sniffles. "Good. Close your eyes, Hannah, and I'll tell you about them." And then Amani began to sing. The lullaby was one her own mother had sung, the Amharic words flowing like honey, ancient and soothing. She sang of stars and mountains, of rivers that ran to the sea, of a child safe in her mother's arms. Her voice was gentle, barely above a whisper, but it carried through the quiet cabin like a benediction. Hannah's breathing began to slow. Her small hand unclenched from her father's shirt. Within 2 verses her eyes had drifted closed. By the 3rd, She was asleep. Amani finished the song, then carefully tucked the airplane blanket around the child's shoulders. When she looked up, the man was staring at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Wonder, perhaps, or something deeper. "Thank you," he breathed. "I've been trying for 2 hours. She has an ear infection and the pressure." He trailed off, running a hand through his hair. "Thank you." "It's nothing," Amani said, though her heart felt strangely full. "She's beautiful, you're very blessed." "I am." His gaze lingered on her face. "That song, what language was that?" "Amharic. I'm from Ethiopia." "It was beautiful. You were—" He paused, seeming to search for words. "You have a gift." Heat crept into Amani's cheeks. "Just practice. I have younger siblings." Before he could respond, Mrs. Carrington's voice cut through the moment like a knife. "Amani, get back to your seat now." The man's eyes sharpened, his gaze shifting to the blonde woman 3 rows back. Something changed in his expression, a hardness that hadn't been there before. "Is there a problem?" "No problem," Mrs. Carrington said tightly. "My employee just needs to remember her place." The word employee hung in the air, laden with implications. Amani felt shame prickle across her skin, not because of what she'd done, but because of how Mrs. Carrington made it sound, like kindness was something to be ashamed of, like helping a child was overstepping some invisible boundary. "I apologize for disturbing you," Amani said quietly to the man, then retreated to her seat. Mrs. Carrington's perfectly manicured nails dug into Amani's arm the moment she sat down. "You're fired," she whispered, venom dripping from every syllable. "The moment we land, you're done. I will not tolerate this kind of insubordination. You left your charge to coddle some stranger's brat. Pack your things when we get home. You have until tomorrow morning to be out of the guest house." The words hit like physical blows. Fired. Out of the guest house. Her visa was tied to her employment. Without the Carringtons, she had nothing. No job, no place to live, no legal right to stay in the country. All the money she'd saved, all the sacrifices, the loneliness, the humiliation, for nothing. Amani's hands shook in her lap. She clasped them together, willing herself not to cry. Brandon was still sleeping, oblivious. The little girl, Hannah, was peaceful in her father's arms 3 rows up. Worth it, Amani told herself fiercely. Even if it cost her everything, that moment of peace had been worth it. But as the plane began its descent into Los Angeles, as the city lights spread out below like fallen stars, Amani couldn't stop the fear that crept through her chest. Tomorrow, she would have nowhere to go. No money for a plane ticket home, no way to help her family. 3 rows ahead, Yunwoo Kim adjusted his daughter in his arms and glanced back at the young woman who'd given him 2 hours of peace. He'd seen the exchange with her employer, heard the cruel dismissal. Something about it settled wrong in his chest, a discomfort he couldn't quite name. He made a mental note to have his people look into the Carrington family, just in case. LAX at midnight was a special kind of chaos, a river of exhausted travelers, the harsh fluorescent lights, the smell of bad coffee, and recycled air. Amani stood near baggage claim with her single battered suitcase and a canvas bag containing everything she owned, watching the Carringtons disappear through the sliding glass doors without a backward glance. Mrs. Carrington had made good on her threat the moment they'd cleared customs. "You're terminated effective immediately. I'll have your final paycheck mailed too. Wherever you end up. Don't bother coming back to the house." Brandon had looked confused. "But who's going to make my breakfast?" His mother had pulled him away without answering. Now Amani stood in the terminal, her phone clutched in one hand, trying to figure out what to do. She had $300 in her bank account, not enough for a hotel room for more than a few nights, certainly not enough for a ticket back to Ethiopia. Her visa would expire the moment her employment was officially terminated. She could be deported. The word tasted like ash in her mouth. "Excuse me." The voice was deep, familiar. Amani turned to find the man from the plane standing a few feet away, his daughter asleep against his shoulder. Up close, under the harsh airport lights, he was even more striking and intimidating. The tattoo on his neck seemed darker now, the tiger's eyes almost predatory. His white shirt was slightly rumpled from travel, but he still carried himself with the kind of confidence that came from power. "I'm sorry," Amani said automatically, though she wasn't sure what she was apologizing for. Don't apologize." His eyes, dark and intelligent, swept over her suitcase, her obvious uncertainty. "I couldn't help but overhear on the plane. You were fired because you helped my daughter." Shame heated her cheeks again. "It's not your fault. I chose to leave my seat." "Yes, you did. To help a stranger's child." He shifted Hana's weight slightly. "I'm Hyunwoo Kim, and I owe you a debt. You don't owe me anything, really. I should go—" "Where?" The question was gentle but pointed. "Where are you going right now?" Amani's throat tightened. I'll find something. A hostel, maybe. A friend." She had no friends in Los Angeles. She had no one. Hyunwoo studied her for a long moment, and Amani had the unsettling feeling he could see straight through her polite lies. "You have nowhere to go," he said quietly. It wasn't a question. She lifted her chin, pride warring with desperation. "I'll figure something out. I always do." "I'm sure you will, but I have a better solution." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card, pressing it into her hand. The card was thick, expensive, embossed with a company name she didn't recognize and a phone number. "I need a nanny for Hana. Live-in position, competitive salary. I can help with visa sponsorship." Amani stared at the card, her heart pounding. "You don't know anything about me. I know you sacrificed your job to comfort a crying child. I know you're kind, patient, and good with kids." His expression softened slightly. "I also know you're in trouble, and I'm in a position to help. Consider it mutual benefit. I need someone I can trust with my daughter, and you need a job that won't treat you like you're disposable." It was too good to be true. In Amani's experience, nothing came without strings attached. "Why would you do this for a stranger?" "Because you did something for a stranger," he replied simply. "My daughter, and because—" He paused, his jaw tightening. "I know what it's like to be treated as less than human. I came to this country with nothing. People made assumptions about me based on how I looked, where I was from. I swore if I ever had power, I'd use it differently." There was steel underneath his words, and something else, truth maybe. Amani searched his face, trying to find the trap, the catch, but all she saw was exhaustion and sincerity, and a little girl sleeping peacefully against her father's shoulder. "I don't even know you," she whispered. "Then get to know me. Come to the house tomorrow for an interview. Bring your resume. Meet Hana properly. If you don't feel comfortable, walk away. No obligation." His eyes held hers. "But at least give yourself the option." Amani's phone buzzed in her pocket. A message from her mother in Addis Ababa, asking if she'd landed safely, asking when the next money transfer would come. Her younger brother needed school supplies. Her sister needed medicine. Her family needed her. She looked down at the business card, at the Los Angeles address printed in elegant script. "Tomorrow?" she asked quietly. 2 o'clock. "I'll have a car pick you up. Where are you staying tonight?" She couldn't admit she had nowhere. Hyunwoo's expression shifted into something that might have been frustration or pity. She couldn't tell which. He pulled out his phone, typed rapidly, then looked back at her. "I'm sending a car for you now. It'll take you to a hotel. The room is already paid for. 3 nights, in case you need time to think. No strings attached. Whether you come tomorrow or not, you have a safe place to sleep tonight." "I can't accept that." "You can, and you will." His tone left no room for argument. "I have a daughter. If she were ever in your position, I'd hope someone would make sure she was safe. Let me do the same for you." Before Amani could protest further, a black town car pulled up to the curb. The driver emerged, a middle-aged Korean man who greeted Hyunwoo with a respectful bow before reaching for Amani's suitcase. "Min will take you to the hotel," Hyunwoo said. "There's a Korean restaurant on the ground floor. Tell them to put dinner on my account, get some rest, and Amani—" He waited until she met his eyes. "Thank you. For my daughter. Whatever you decide tomorrow, thank you." Then he was gone, disappearing into the Los Angeles night with Hana still sleeping against his shoulder, leaving Amani standing beside the car with a business card clutched in her hand and hope flickering dangerously to life in her chest. The driver opened the door with a kind smile. "Miss Hassan, please." Amani climbed into the car, her mind spinning. This was crazy. She knew nothing about Hyunwoo Kim beyond the fact that he had money, a daughter, and apparently the kind of pull that could arrange hotel rooms and cars with a single phone call. But as Min drove her through the glittering streets of Los Angeles, past palm trees and skyscrapers, and the distant glimmer of the ocean, Amani couldn't shake the memory of Hyunwoo's eyes when she'd sung to his daughter. The gratitude, yes, but also something else. Recognition, maybe. The look of someone who understood what it meant to fight for every small piece of dignity in a world that wanted to strip it away. Maybe, just maybe, this was the miracle her mother had always prayed for. The house wasn't a house. It was an estate. Amani stared through the car window as Min drove through wrought iron gates that opened onto a winding driveway, lined with sculpted hedges and flowering trees. The property sprawled across what must have been several acres in the Hollywood Hills, the main house a stunning blend of modern glass and natural stone that seemed to grow out of the hillside itself. Through floor-to-ceiling windows, she could see sleek furniture, gleaming hardwood floors, and art that probably cost more than she'd earn in a lifetime. This was a mistake. She didn't belong here. But before she could ask Min to turn around, the car stopped, and Hyunwoo emerged from the front door. He looked different in daylight, still imposing but softer somehow. He wore dark jeans and a cream-colored sweater that revealed the edge of his neck tattoo, his hair slightly mussed as if he'd been running his hands through it. When he smiled, it transformed his entire face. "You came," he said, and she heard genuine relief in his voice. "I almost didn't." Honesty seemed safer than pretense. "I'm glad you're here." He gestured toward the house. "Come in." Hannah's been asking about the singing lady all morning. The interior was even more breathtaking than the exterior, an open concept space where natural light poured through massive windows overlooking the city. But what struck Amani most wasn't the luxury. It was the subtle touches that spoke of a home rather than a showpiece. Hannah's toys were scattered near the fireplace. A children's book lay open on the couch. Crayon drawings covered one section of the refrigerator, held up by magnets. "Daddy! Daddy! Is she here?" A small whirlwind burst into the room. Hannah, wearing a pink dress and light-up sneakers, her pigtails bouncing as she ran to her father. When she spotted Amani, she stopped, suddenly shy. Hi, Hannah." Amani crouched down, making herself small and non-threatening. "How are your ears feeling today?" "Better. Daddy gave me medicine." Hannah inched closer. "Will you sing again?" "Maybe later, if your daddy says it's okay." Hyunwoo watched the interaction with an unreadable expression. "Why don't you show Amani your playroom, Hannah? I need to talk to her for a few minutes first, and then she can play with you." Hannah's face lit up. "Okay, come on." She grabbed Amani's hand with complete trust and pulled her down a hallway decorated with more of her artwork. The playroom was a child's paradise. Shelves of books, bins of toys, a dress-up corner, even a small stage with a karaoke machine. But Hannah bypassed all of it, dragging Amani to a wall covered in photos. "That's my daddy," she announced, pointing to a picture of Hyunwoo in a suit, looking severe and powerful. "And that's me when I was a baby. And that's Halmayoni, my grandma. She lives in Korea, but she visits sometimes. And that's—" her voice wavered. "That's my mommy. She's in heaven now." The photo showed a beautiful Korean woman holding infant Hannah, her smile radiant but her eyes tired. Something about the image made Amani's chest ache. "She was very pretty," Amani said gently. "You look like her." "Daddy says she had the best smile." Hannah's finger traced the edge of the frame. "I don't remember her much. She got sick when I was 2. Daddy says she loved me very, very much. I'm sure she did, sweet one." "Do you have a mommy?" "I do. She's in Ethiopia. That's very far away." "In Africa." Hannah's eyes widened. "Africa? With lions and elephants?" "Some parts, yes. Where I'm from, there are mountains so tall they touch the clouds." "Wow." Hannah considered this seriously. "I want to go there someday. Will you take me?" Before Amani could answer, Hyunwoo appeared in the doorway. "Hannah, why don't you show Amani your favorite book? I'll be right back." Once Hannah was occupied, he led Amani to his office, a sleek space with a massive desk, built-in bookshelves, and a view that stretched all the way to downtown Los Angeles. He gestured for her to sit, then settled into the chair across from her, rather than behind the desk. "Thank you for coming," he began. "I want to be up front with you about the situation." Hana's mother, Soo-jin, died 2 years ago from cancer. Since then, I've had 4 nannies. None of them lasted more than 6 months. Amani's heart sank. Why not? Honestly, because of me. His expression turned rueful. I work long hours. I'm demanding. I have high standards when it comes to my daughter's care, and He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. My business requires discretion. The people who work for me need to be trustworthy, and trust doesn't come easily to me. What kind of business? Amani asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. Import-export, real estate, investments. His tone was smooth, practiced. Nothing you need to worry about, but it means I keep irregular hours and sometimes I need to travel on short notice. Hana needs stability, someone who can be consistent when I can't be. There was something he wasn't saying. Amani could feel it in the space between his words, but she also understood desperation when she saw it, and Hyun-woo Kim was desperate for someone who would care for his daughter with genuine love, rather than just professional courtesy. What would you need from me? She asked. Childcare primarily, school drop-off and pick-up. She's starting pre-K in the fall. Meals, bedtime routine, playtime, educational activities, basic household management related to Hana, laundry, tidying her spaces. You'd have your own suite in the West Wing, complete privacy. Salary is $5,000 a month plus room and board, health insurance, and I'll sponsor your work visa. $5,000. Amani's mouth went dry. The Carringtons had paid her $1,800, and that had seemed like a fortune. That's too much, she whispered. It's less than you're worth, Hyun-woo countered. You lost your job because you showed kindness to my daughter. The least I can do is make sure you're compensated fairly. And Amani? His eyes met hers, dark and intense. I saw how you were treated yesterday. I won't tolerate that here. You'll be an employee, yes, but you'll be respected. Always. Something in his voice made her believe him. Can I think about it? She asked. Of course, but... He pulled an envelope from his desk drawer. This is an advance on your first month's salary, whether you take the job or not. You need options, and I'm in a position to provide them. No strings. Amani stared at the envelope, pride warring with need. I can't just take your money. You're not taking it. You earned it. You gave me peace on that plane, and you're giving Hana a chance at having someone who actually cares about her. His expression softened. Please, let me help. In the playroom, Hana started singing, off-key and enthusiastic, a children's song about sunshine. Amani thought about the hotel room she'd been too nervous to sleep in last night, about her mother's messages asking about money, about the way Mrs. Carrington had made her feel small and worthless. She thought about Hana's shy smile and trusting hand. She thought about Hyun-woo's eyes when he'd said, respect. 1 month trial, she heard herself say. If it's not working for either of us after that, I'll walk away, no hard feelings. Hyun-woo's face transformed with relief. 1 month, deal. He extended his hand. When Amani shook it, she felt the calluses on his palm. Surprising on a man who looked like he'd never worked a day in his life. His grip was firm but gentle, and when he smiled, it reached his eyes. Welcome home, Amani. 3 months passed like a dream, or maybe more accurately, like waking up from a nightmare Amani hadn't realized she'd been trapped in. Life with the Kims was nothing like life with the Carringtons. Hyun-woo kept his word about respect. He asked rather than demanded, said please and thank you, and never once made Amani feel like she was less than human. Hana blossomed under consistent care, her initial shyness melting into bright confidence. She chattered constantly, dragged Amani on adventures through the sprawling property, and insisted on learning Amharic phrases so she could talk like Amani. The visa sponsorship came through within weeks. Hyun-woo had lawyers Amani couldn't have afforded in a lifetime, and they made the process smooth. Her status changed from precarious to stable, and with it, the constant knot of anxiety in her chest began to loosen. She sent money home every month now, real money enough that her mother cried on their video calls. Enough that her brother could stay in school, her sister could get the medicine she needed. Enough that Amani could save some for herself, building a cushion against future disasters. But it wasn't just financial security that changed her. It was the way Hyun-woo looked at her sometimes, like she mattered, like her opinion held weight. It was the way Hana would climb into her lap during story time and whisper, I love you, Amani. It was the sense of belonging that had been absent from her life since leaving Ethiopia. She tried not to think about the other thing, the way her pulse quickened when Hyunwoo came home late at night, his white shirt untucked and his hair disheveled, the way his rare smiles made her stomach flip, the way his hand would brush hers when they both reached for Hana at the same time, and the electricity that would arc between them in those brief moments of contact. He was her employer. She was his employee. That line was sacred. But lines, she was learning, had a way of blurring. It was a Friday evening in late October when everything shifted. Hyunwoo had been away on business for 3 days. A trip to San Francisco that he'd been vague about, the way he was vague about most of his work. Amani had grown accustomed to his absences, to managing Hana's questions about when Daddy would be home, to the quiet efficiency of their established routine. She was in the kitchen preparing dinner when she heard the front door open, followed by Hana's delighted shriek. "Daddy! Daddy, you're back!" Amani smiled, stirring the pot of stew she'd learned to make from a Korean cookbook Hyunwoo had given her. Hana had become obsessed with Korean food, wanting to connect with her heritage, and Amani had thrown herself into learning how to cook it properly. "Something smells incredible," Hyunwoo's voice carried from the entryway, warm with exhaustion. "Amani's making galbi jjim. She said it's your favorite." Footsteps approached the kitchen, and then Hyunwoo was there, Hana perched on his hip, both of them smiling. But Amani noticed the tension around his eyes, the tightness in his shoulders that spoke of stress he wouldn't voice. "You made galbi jjim?" He sounded genuinely surprised. Amani felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Hana said you liked it. I might have gotten it wrong. It's my first attempt at braised short ribs." He crossed to the stove and looked into the pot, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, his eyes closed. "It smells exactly like my mother's." There was something raw in his voice, something vulnerable that Amani had never heard before. When his eyes opened again, they were suspiciously bright. "I'll set the table," Amani said quickly, giving him space. Dinner was quiet but comfortable. Hana chattered about her week, the art project she'd made at pre-K, the new friend she'd made at the playground, the butterfly she'd seen in the garden. Hyunwoo listened with complete attention, asking questions, making her laugh. But every so often, his gaze would drift to Amani, and she'd feel that spark again, that awareness that was becoming harder to ignore. After Hana was tucked into bed, a process that involved 3 stories, 2 lullabies, and extensive negotiations about whether she could have a nightlight shaped like a unicorn, Amani returned to the kitchen to find Hyunwoo still at the table, a glass of whiskey in his hand. "You should rest," she said gently. "You look exhausted. Sit with me for a minute." It was framed as a question, but his eyes held something close to pleading. Amani hesitated, then took the chair across from him. This felt different from their usual interactions, more intimate somehow. The house was quiet around them, the city lights twinkling through the windows like earthbound stars. "Thank you," Hyunwoo said finally. "For the meal, for taking care of Hana, for—" He trailed off, his fingers tracing the rim of his glass. "For making this place feel like a home again. It hasn't felt that way since Soo-jin died. Hana makes it easy. She's a wonderful child. She is, because of you." His eyes met hers, dark and intense in the dim lighting. "When I hired you, I thought I just needed help with childcare. But you've given us so much more than that. You've given Hana stability, laughter, love, and you've given me—" He paused, seeming to struggle with words. "Peace. For the first time in 2 years, I don't feel like I'm drowning." Amani's throat tightened. "You're a good father, Hyunwoo. Hana knows she's loved." "Thanks to you." He set down his glass, his expression shifting into something she couldn't quite read. "I need to tell you something, about my business." Amani's stomach dropped. This was the moment she'd been half expecting since she moved in. The revelation that would explain the expensive lawyers, the odd hours, the men in dark suits who sometimes came to the house for meetings Amani was never present for. "For you don't have to—" "I do." His jaw tightened. "You should know who you're working for. My family's business isn't entirely legal. We started with legitimate real estate, but my grandfather also built an organization that operates in the shadows. Protection services primarily, some imports that bypass certain regulations, nothing that hurts people. I have rules about that. But still, not legal." The word hung in the air between them. Mafia. He was describing the mafia. Amani should have been terrified. She should have walked out right then, visa or no visa, job or no job. But all she could think was how carefully he'd treated her, how much he loved his daughter, how the men who came to the house always called him Sajangnim, with genuine respect rather than fear. "Does it put Hana in danger?" she asked quietly. "I've made enemies, yes, but I've also built walls around my family, guards, security systems, protocols. No one touches my daughter, ever. And me?" His eyes darkened. "You're under my protection too. Anyone who even looks at you wrong would answer to me." There was steel in those words, and promise, and something else that made Amani's breath catch. "Why are you telling me this?" she whispered. Hyunwoo leaned forward, his elbows on the table, his gaze never leaving hers. "Because I'm tired of secrets. Because you deserve honesty. And because—" He paused, his hand reaching across the table to rest near hers, not quite touching. "Because what I'm feeling for you is becoming impossible to hide, and you should know exactly who and what you'd be getting involved with if you feel anything close to the same." The confession hung in the air between them, electric and dangerous and undeniable. Amani's heart hammered against her ribs. She should pull away. She should maintain that professional line. She should protect herself. Instead, she let her fingers slide the final inch to touch his. "I feel it too," she breathed. And outside, in the darkness beyond the windows, someone was watching. The man watching from the shadows had been patient. 3 months of surveillance, of tracking patterns, of identifying weaknesses. Hyunwoo Kim was careful, paranoid even, but everyone had blind spots. And his biggest blind spot was currently sitting at his kitchen table, holding his hand like she had every right to be part of his world. The Ethiopian nanny. Marcus Chen had done his research. Amani Hassan, 26 years old, work visa sponsored by Kim, no criminal record, no red flags, just a woman trying to survive in a foreign country, who'd stumbled into the orbit of one of Los Angeles's most powerful Korean crime bosses. She was leverage, and leverage was exactly what Marcus needed. Inside the house, Amani became aware of headlights sweeping across the driveway, unusual for this time of night. Hyunwoo's entire body went rigid, his hand tightening around hers for just a moment before he released her and stood in one fluid motion. "Stay here," he commanded, his voice transformed from soft to steel. "Lock the door behind me. If anything happens, there's a panic button under the kitchen counter. It alerts my security team." "Hyunwoo!" But he was already moving, pulling a phone from his pocket and speaking rapid Korean to someone on the other end. Amani watched through the window as he stepped outside, his posture radiating controlled danger. The car that pulled up was sleek and black, its windows tinted. When the driver emerged, Amani recognized him, one of the men who sometimes came for meetings, older and distinguished-looking. But it was the passenger that made her blood run cold. A woman, elegant, beautiful, Korean. She moved toward Hyunwoo with the confidence of someone who belonged, and when she spoke, even from this distance, Amani could read possession in her body language. Jealousy, sharp and unexpected, sliced through Amani's chest. The conversation was brief. Hyunwoo's posture remained rigid, his responses clipped. Finally, the woman touched his arm, a gesture that was both intimate and commanding, and Amani turned away from the window, her stomach churning. What was she doing? She'd known him for 3 months. She was his employee, caring for his daughter. Whatever she'd felt in that kitchen moment was foolish, dangerous, inappropriate. He was a crime boss with a complicated past, and she was a nanny with a visa that depended on his goodwill. The front door opened, closed. Footsteps approached. "Amani." Hyunwoo's voice was tight. "I need to tell you something else." She turned to find him standing in the doorway, tension radiating from every line of his body. The tiger tattoo on his neck seemed to pulse in the dim light. "The woman you just saw, that's Seo-yeon Park. Her father runs the largest Korean organization on the East Coast. 2 years ago, before Soo-jin died, he proposed a marriage alliance between our families to strengthen territories, unite resources." Amani's heart sank. "And you agreed?" "I refused. My wife was dying, and I told him I wasn't interested in strategic marriages. But Seo-yeon—" He ran a hand through his hair. frustration evident. She's been persistent. Her father is powerful, and turning them down completely could mean war. I've been trying to handle it diplomatically, but she showed up tonight to pressure me for an answer. What did you tell her? His eyes met hers, dark and intense. That I'm not interested in marrying someone I don't love. That business alliances aren't worth sacrificing my daughter's happiness or my own. That she needs to find someone else, because my answer is no, and will always be no. Relief flooded through Amani, followed immediately by fear. Will that cause problems for you? Probably. His expression turned grim. But I'm done making decisions based on fear or obligation. Soo-jin taught me that life's too short to waste on things that don't matter. And you, Amani, he stepped closer, his voice dropping. You matter. What I feel for you matters. I know this is complicated. I know there are power dynamics we need to navigate carefully, but I need you to know that what happened in that kitchen wasn't a mistake. It was the most honest I've been in 2 years. Amani's hands trembled. I'm your employee, your daughter's nanny. This is... I know. And if you want to stay just that, I'll respect it. We'll pretend this conversation never happened and nothing changes. But if you feel what I feel... He reached out, his fingers gently touching her cheek. Then we figure it out together. Carefully. Making sure Hana comes first. Making sure you're protected. Making sure no one can ever use you against me. People already are, Amani whispered. That woman came here because of me, didn't she? She knows you've changed, that there's someone else. Seo Yeon is perceptive, but she doesn't know it's you, and she won't. Not until we're ready. His thumb traced her cheekbone. I can protect you, Amani. From my world, from anyone who might want to hurt me by hurting you, but only if you let me. Amani closed her eyes, leaning into his touch, despite every rational thought screaming at her to stop. This is crazy. Completely insane, he agreed. But also, the first thing that's felt right since Soo-jin died. You brought light back into this house, you made my daughter laugh again, and you made me remember what it feels like to hope for something beyond just surviving. When Amani opened her eyes, she found him watching her with an expression so tender it made her chest ache. One condition, she said quietly. We do this slowly. We protect Hana first. She can't get attached to something that might not last. And I need to stay employed. Keep my independence. I won't be dependent on you the way I was on the Carringtons. Agreed. You'll always have your own income, your own space, your own choices. His hand moved to cup her jaw. And Hana's happiness is always priority number one. We take this at whatever pace feels right. What if people find out? What if it puts Hana in danger? Then we'll deal with it. Together. His forehead rested against hers. I've spent 2 years building walls to keep everyone at a distance, but you just walked right through them by singing to my daughter on an airplane. And I don't want you to leave. I don't want to leave either, Amani admitted. Then stay, not just as Hana's nanny, as whatever we become. When he kissed her, it was gentle, a question rather than a demand. Amani answered by rising on her toes, her hands fisting in his shirt, letting herself fall into the warmth and safety she'd been craving since the moment her lips had curved into a smile for a crying child. Outside, Marcus Chen made a phone call. I've got what we need. The nanny's the weak point. When do you want me to move? The voice on the other end was cold, calculating. Soon, but let them get comfortable first. Let Kim think he's safe. Then we take everything from him, starting with the people he loves. 18 months later, the restaurant overlooked the Pacific, its floor-to-ceiling windows framing a sunset that painted the ocean in shades of gold and amber. Amani stood on the balcony, the engagement ring on her finger catching the fading light. A simple band with a single diamond, elegant and understated, exactly her style. Amani, come see. Hana's voice carried from inside, where she was showing the ring to Hyunwoo's mother, who'd flown in from Seoul for the celebration. The past year and a half had been anything but easy. Marcus Chen's attempt to kidnap Hana had failed thanks to Hyunwoo's security measures, but the threat had forced difficult conversations about the future. Hyunwoo had started the slow process of legitimizing his business operations, separating himself from the illegal aspects his grandfather had built. It would take years, maybe decades, to fully clean the family name, but he was trying. For Hana. For Amani. For the family they were building. The engagement had come 3 months ago on a quiet evening after Hana had gone to bed. No grand gesture, just Hyunwoo's trembling hands and earnest eyes asking if she'd be willing to build a life with him, knowing it would never be simple. Amani had said yes without hesitation. They weren't rushing into marriage. Both wanted to be sure Hana was comfortable with the transition, that Amani's visa situation was permanently resolved, that they'd weathered enough storms together to trust their foundation. But they were engaged, committed, building something real. Inside, Hana laughed at something her grandmother said, the sound pure and bright and full of joy. Hyunwoo appeared beside Amani, his arm sliding around her waist. "Happy," he murmured, pressing a kiss to her temple. Amani leaned into him, watching the sun sink into the ocean, thinking about airplanes and lullabies and the strange, beautiful way life could change in a single moment of kindness. "So happy," she whispered, "so incredibly happy." And somewhere in the distance, a child sang, off-key and enthusiastic, a melody that sounded like home.